The champagne bubbles rose like tiny prayers through crystal flutes, catching the amber glow of the chandeliers that cast dancing shadows across the marble floors of the penthouse. Celeste Morgan stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, her ivory silk gown flowing around her like liquid moonlight, watching the city of Seattle sparkle 40 stories below. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who appeared to have everything: beauty, wealth, and a husband who commanded respect in boardrooms across 3 continents. But reflections, she knew, could be the most dangerous lies of all. "You're trembling." Julian Blackwood's voice came from behind her, warm and concerned. She felt his hands settle gently on her shoulders, his touch familiar yet still electric after 6 months of courtship that had led to this moment. "Wedding nerves?" Celeste closed her eyes, savoring what might be the last moment of peace between them. In a few minutes, she would shatter the carefully constructed world they'd built together with words that tasted like bitter truth and broken promises. "Julian," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you. Something about who I really am." She felt him stiffen behind her, his hands pausing in their gentle massage of her shoulders. When she turned to face him, his dark eyes held an expression she couldn't quite read, concern mixed with something that looked almost like anticipation. "I'm listening," he said simply, guiding her to the leather sofa that faced the fireplace. The flames cast shifting patterns across his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his cheekbones and the small scar near his left temple that he'd never explained. Celeste perched on the edge of the cushion, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "My name isn't really Celeste Morgan. That woman, the art gallery owner you met at the charity auction, the one who loves Monet and collects vintage wine, she doesn't exist." Julian's expression remained neutral, but she caught the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Then who are you?" "My real name is Catherine Mills," she said, the words feeling strange on her tongue after months of living the lie. 3 years ago, I was a covert intelligence operative. I specialized in deep cover assignments, infiltrating criminal organizations that other agents couldn't touch. She looked down at her hands, noting how soft they'd become during her time as Celeste. Once they'd been calloused from weapons training and scarred from close calls. I was declared dead in Prague during a mission that went sideways. The agency helped me disappear, gave me a new identity, a new life. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Celeste forced herself to meet his gaze, expecting to see shock, betrayal, perhaps even fear. Instead, Julian was studying, her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with unease. "That must have been terrifying," he said finally. "Losing everything, everyone you'd ever known." His calm response was somehow more unsettling than anger would have been. "Julian, do you understand what I'm telling you? Everything about our relationship has been built on a lie. I've been deceiving you from the moment we met." A smile played at the corners of Julian's mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. He rose from the sofa and walked to the bar cart, pouring himself 2 fingers of whiskey with practiced ease. "Would you like to know what I find most interesting about your confession, Catherine?" The sound of her real name on his lips sent ice through her veins. "You assumed I didn't already know." The whiskey glass slipped from Catherine's nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor in an explosion of crystal and amber liquid. Julian's words echoed in the sudden silence, each syllable a hammer blow against everything she thought. She understood about their relationship. "You knew?" she whispered, rising slowly from the sofa. Every muscle in her body coiled for fight or flight. Old training reasserting itself despite months of playing the perfect society wife. "How long?" Julian swirled his own whiskey, watching the liquid catch the firelight. "From the beginning." "Did you really think someone could approach Julian Blackwood without a thorough background check? Your Catherine Mills identity was good, excellent actually, but not perfect." Before Catherine could respond, the secure elevator chimed. and the doors slid open to reveal a woman with short auburn hair and predatory green eyes. Detective Nina Reyes stepped into the penthouse, her service weapon drawn but lowered, her gaze sweeping the room with professional efficiency. "We have a problem," Nina announced without preamble. "Handler Morrison is dead, tortured for information before someone put 3 bullets in his head." Catherine's blood turned to ice. Morrison had been her lifeline, the only person who knew both her identities and had the power to keep her safe. When? 6 hours ago. His apartment was torn apart, files stolen. Nina's eyes flicked to Julian, taking in his expensive suit and calm demeanor. "And you must be the husband. Interesting timing for a wedding." From the shadows near the kitchen emerged another figure, a man Catherine had never seen before, tall and lean with silver hair and eyes like winter storms. He moved, with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to violence, his hands empty but positioned for quick action. "Victor Cross," the man introduced himself, nodding to Julian. "Your husband's head of security, among other things." Catherine felt the walls closing in around her. Too many players, too many variables she hadn't accounted for. "Julian, what the hell is going on?" "The same thing that's been going on for 3 years, Julian replied, setting down his glass with deliberate care. "Someone has been systematically eliminating everyone connected to your last mission in Prague. Morrison was just the latest." Nina moved closer, her weapon now holstered but her posture still alert. "The Constantine Network," she said grimly. "We thought we destroyed it when you supposedly died, but it was bigger than we realized. International arms dealing, human trafficking, money laundering, the works." "And now they know Catherine Mills is alive," Victor added, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place, "which means they know Celeste Morgan is a fabrication." Catherine's mind raced through the implications. If her cover was blown, everyone connected to her was in danger. But more than that, if Julian had known her real identity from the beginning, then their entire relationship— "Was any of it real?" she asked quietly, looking at her new husband with eyes that felt like they were seeing him clearly for the first time. "The courtship? The proposal? This wedding? Was any of it genuine?" Julian's expression softened, and for a moment she glimpsed the man she'd fallen in love with beneath the calculating exterior. "The feelings were real, Catherine. Everything else." He gestured helplessly. "I needed to get close to you. My company has been tracking the Constantine Network for 2 years. When we discovered you were alive and in Seattle, it seemed like fate." "Fate," she repeated bitterly. "Or careful manipulation." Nina cleared her throat, drawing their attention back to the immediate crisis. "We can sort out relationship issues later. Right now, we need to focus on staying alive. Morrison gave up something before he died. I can feel it. They're coming for all of us." As if summoned by her words, Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face darkening. "Motion. Sensors just triggered on the ground floor. Multiple contacts moving fast and coordinated." The penthouse's lights suddenly cut out, plunging them into darkness, broken only by the city's glow through the windows. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in an eerie red hue. "How many ways out of this place?" Catherine asked, her training taking over as she mentally cataloged potential weapons and escape routes. "2, Julian replied grimly. "The elevator, which they've obviously compromised, and the emergency stairs, which lead right into their arms." Victor was already moving toward a panel hidden behind a painting, his fingers dancing over a keypad. "There's a third option," he said, as the panel slid away to reveal a cache of weapons and tactical gear. "We fight our way out." Catherine accepted. The pistol he handed her, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. The weight of the weapon in her hands felt like coming home after a long absence. "Then we better make sure we win." Part 3. The Puppet Master. The emergency stairwell echoed with the controlled chaos of their descent. Boots on concrete, whispered coordinates, the soft click of weapons being readied. Catherine led the way, her movements fluid and silent despite the restricting silk of her wedding gown. Behind her, Nina maintained overwatch while Julian and Victor brought up the rear, their footsteps creating a rhythm of shared purpose that felt almost military in its precision. They'd made it to the 32nd floor when Victor's earpiece crackled with static. "Movement on 28, he whispered. "At least 6 hostiles, professionally equipped." Catherine raised her fist, bringing the group to a halt. Through the concrete walls, she could hear the faint sound of voices, calm, organized, deadly. These weren't street thugs or desperate criminals. These were operators, the kind of people who killed for governments and corporations with equal efficiency. "There's something else," Julian said quietly, his phone glowing in the dim emergency lighting. "I just received a text from an unknown number." Nina moved closer to read over his shoulder, her weapon trained downward toward the sounds below. "What does it say?" Julian's face had gone pale in the red emergency lights. "It says penthouse, conference room. Come alone, or watch Catherine's brother die on live stream." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Marcus died in Prague. I saw the body." "Did you?" The voice came from above them, cultured and feminine, carrying the kind of authority that made trained killers stop and listen. Dr. Helena Ward descended the stairs with unhurried grace, flanked by 2 men in tactical gear who moved like shadows, given form. "Or did you see what we wanted you to see?" Catherine's weapon was up and aimed before conscious thought engaged, but Ward simply smiled, an expression devoid of warmth or humanity. She was perhaps 50, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes like chips of Arctic ice. Everything about her spoke of controlled power and absolute confidence. "Lower your weapons," Ward said conversationally. "All of you, unless, of course, you'd prefer to watch Marcus suffer before he dies." She produced a tablet, swiping the screen to life. The image that appeared made Catherine's vision blur with rage and terror. Marcus, older, scarred, but unmistakably her brother, sat bound to a chair in what looked like a medical examination room. Electrodes were attached to his temples, and his eyes held the hollow look of someone who'd been broken and rebuilt multiple times. "He's been my guest for 3 years, Ward continued, apparently oblivious to the weapons still trained on her. "Such a useful subject for my research into enhanced interrogation techniques. Did you know the human mind can be shattered and reformed almost indefinitely, given the proper stimulation?" Nina's finger tightened on her trigger. "You sick—" "Detective Reyes," Ward interrupted smoothly. "Your righteous indignation is touching, but ultimately pointless. I've spent 15 years building a network that spans 6 continents and reaches into the highest levels of government and industry. Your little Prague operation was nothing more than a minor inconvenience." Julian stepped forward, his businessman's instincts apparently overriding his survival training. "What do you want?" Ward's smile widened, showing perfect white teeth that somehow made her look more predatory. "What I've always wanted, Mr. Blackwood. Control. Your technology company has been quite useful in facilitating my operations. Encrypted communications, financial transfers, data storage, all completely legal and above board, of course. You've been using my systems?" Julian's voice carried genuine shock and growing anger. "For 2 years, Ward confirmed. Your head of security here was most helpful in providing access." She nodded, toward Victor, who hadn't moved or spoken since her arrival. "Weren't you, Victor?" The betrayal hit Catherine like ice water. Victor Cross, the man Julian trusted with his life, the man who'd armed them for this fight, was working for the enemy. In the red emergency lighting, she could see the truth, written in the subtle shift of his posture, the way his weapon had gradually moved away from Ward's men. Victor, Julian whispered. The single word carrying years of trust and friendship turned to ash. I'm sorry, Victor said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. But Dr. Ward made me an offer I couldn't refuse. My daughter's life in exchange for occasional access to your systems. Not exactly a difficult choice. Ward consulted her watch with theatrical precision. We're running short on time. Here's what's going to happen. Ms. Mills, or should I say, Catherine, is going to eliminate Detective Reyes and Mr. Blackwood. In return, I'll release her brother and we can all go back to our respective LE. The abandoned subway tunnel beneath Pioneer Square stretched into darkness like the throat of some ancient beast. Catherine moved through the shadows with deadly purpose, her wedding dress now torn and stained with mud and worse things. Behind her, she could hear the methodical footsteps of Agent Phoenix, Ward's top assassin, tracking them through the maze of forgotten passages that honeycombed Seattle's underground. Nina pressed against the concrete wall beside her, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage wrapped around her left shoulder. This was always a trap, she whispered, her voice tight with pain and fury. Ward never intended to let any of us walk away. Catherine nodded grimly. The exchange in the conference room had gone exactly as she'd expected. Badly. Ward had demanded proof of loyalty, a blood offering to seal their new partnership. When Catherine had refused to execute Nina on the spot, the good doctor had simply smiled and released her pet killer into the tunnels after them. Julian was somewhere, behind them with Victor, or what was left of him, after Ward had demonstrated the price of divided loyalties by putting 3 bullets in his chest. Thomas Rivera, Julian's actual head of security, had appeared from nowhere to drag his wounded boss to safety, but Catherine wasn't sure if either man would survive the night. Movement ahead, Nina breathed, raising her weapon despite the obvious pain the action caused. 20 meters moving fast. Catherine closed her eyes and listened. Footsteps, yes, but wrong rhythm, wrong weight distribution. That's not Phoenix, she said. Too heavy, too loud. A figure emerged from the shadows ahead, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the careful gait of someone in significant pain. In the dim emergency lighting that flickered along the tunnel walls, Catherine saw a face she'd thought she'd never see again. Marcus. The name escaped her lips as barely a whisper. Her brother stumbled toward them, one hand pressed against his side where dark blood seeped between his fingers. His face was gaunt and scarred, marked by 3 years of whatever hell Ward had put him through. But his eyes were still the same warm brown she remembered from childhood. Katie, he said, using the nickname he'd called her since she was 5 years old. Christ, I thought I'd never see you again. She was moving before conscious thought engaged, crossing the distance between them in 3 quick strides. But training and paranoia made her stop just out of arm's reach, her weapon still ready. How did you escape? Marcus managed a weak smile that didn't quite hide the pain etched into every line of his face. Ward's people got sloppy when the alarms started going off. I've been planning this for 6 months, waiting for the right moment. He glanced past her to Nina, taking in the detective's wound with professional assessment. We need to get her medical attention. We need to get out of here alive first, Catherine replied, but she couldn't stop staring at him, this ghost from her past who was somehow standing before her in the flesh. Marcus, what did they do to you? Nothing that can't heal, he lied, and she could see the truth in the way he held himself. The careful movements that spoke of permanent damage done to body and mind. But Ward isn't done with us. She's got Phoenix hunting you, and there are at least 6 more operatives sweeping the tunnels. Nina leaned heavily against the wall, her face pale with blood loss. Phoenix isn't just any assassin, she said through gritted teeth. I've been tracking her for 2 years. Former military, specialized in urban warfare and psychological manipulation. She won't stop until we're all dead. A sound echoed through the tunnel behind them, the soft scrape of footsteps on concrete, moving with predatory patience. Catherine felt the familiar chill that came with being hunted by someone who knew their business. "This way," Marcus said, leading them deeper into the labyrinth. "There's an old maintenance shaft about 50 meters ahead. It connects to the transit tunnels under the city." They moved as quietly as possible, but Nina's labored breathing and Marcus's obvious injuries made stealth nearly impossible. Catherine found herself constantly checking their six, expecting to see Phoenix emerge from the shadows with gun drawn and death in her eyes. The maintenance shaft was exactly where Marcus had promised, a narrow opening barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. But as they approached, Catherine caught a glimpse of movement in the darkness beyond. "Wait," she hissed, raising her hand to stop the others. From the shaft came the soft sound of someone breathing, controlled and patient. Phoenix was already there, waiting for them to walk into her trap. "Well," came a voice from the darkness, cultured, almost conversational. "This is awkward." Phoenix stepped into the light, and Catherine felt her blood run cold. The woman was, perhaps 30, with short blonde hair and the kind of lean, dangerous build that spoke of years spent perfecting the art of killing. But it was her eyes that made Catherine's breath catch, pale blue and completely empty of anything resembling human warmth. "Dr. Ward sends her regards," Phoenix said, raising her weapon with casual precision. "She's decided that your brother's usefulness has expired, along with the rest of you." Marcus stepped protectively in front of Catherine, despite his injuries. "Katie, run!" "Nobody's running," Phoenix said with a smile that belonged on a shark. Dr. Ward was very specific about bringing back proof of death. 3 bullets each should suffice. The tunnel erupted into chaos as Nina, despite her wounds, dove sideways and opened fire. Concrete chips exploded from the walls as Phoenix returned. Fire with mechanical precision, her shots placing exactly where her targets had been a split second before. Catherine grabbed Marcus and pulled him deeper into the shaft as bullets whined overhead. Behind them, she could hear Nina screaming orders in the voice of someone who'd fought in urban combat before. "Stay down and move." They crawled through the narrow passage as gunfire echoed behind them, the sound deafening in the confined space. Catherine's wedding dress caught on every rough edge, tearing away in strips that left her in what amounted to a tattered slip and her grandmother's pearl necklace. The shaft opened into a larger maintenance room filled with pipes and electrical conduit. Marcus collapsed against the far wall, his breathing labored and his face gray with pain and exhaustion. "Marcus, talk to me," Catherine said, checking his wounds with hands that trembled despite her training. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," he admitted. "Ward's people did things, Katie. Things to my mind, my body. I'm not the same person you remember." Before she could respond, Nina came tumbling through the shaft, blood streaming from a fresh wound on her forehead. "Phoenix is down," she gasped. "But not dead. And there are more coming." Catherine helped her brother to his feet, supporting his weight as best she could. "Can you make it to the surface?" Marcus nodded, though the effort clearly cost him. "There's an old speakeasy that connects to the hotel district. If we can reach it—" The sound of approaching footsteps cut him off. Multiple sets, moving with military precision through the tunnels below. Ward wasn't taking any chances. She'd sent her entire team to finish this. "Move," Catherine ordered, and they stumbled forward into the darkness. 3 broken people carrying the weight of too many secrets and not enough time. Part 5. The Price of Love. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel glittered like a jewel box filled with Seattle's elite gathered for the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, while the soft murmur of conversation and gentle clink of champagne glasses created the perfect backdrop for high society at its most refined. Catherine stood in the shadows behind the service entrance, watching the crowd through a crack in the door. She'd traded her ruined wedding dress for a black server's uniform stolen from the hotel's laundry, her hair pulled back and her face carefully made up to hide the cuts and bruises from their underground chase. To any observer, she was just another member of the catering staff, invisible and unremarkable. But she wasn't here to serve champagne. "Target acquired," came Daniel Park's voice through her earpiece. The undercover federal agent had been tracking Ward's organization for 18 months, posing as a tech journalist to get close to the doctor's operation. Ward just entered through the main entrance. She's wearing a red evening gown and has 2 bodyguards flanked discreetly at her 6 and 9 o'clock. Catherine spotted her target immediately. Dr. Helena Ward moved through the crowd with regal composure, accepting congratulations and air kisses from Seattle's power brokers as if she were just another philanthropist, instead of a monster who trafficked in human misery. The woman's presence here wasn't coincidence. Judge Catherine Moss, the federal judge who'd been investigating Ward's network, was tonight's keynote speaker. "Where's Moss?" Catherine whispered into her collar mic. "VIP reception room, 3rd floor," Daniel replied. "She's supposed to give her speech in 20 minutes. After that, she becomes a very public target." Catherine slipped through the service corridors, her movements careful and controlled despite the urgency clawing at her chest. Marcus was safe, barely, in a federal safe house with medical attention. But Nina was still in surgery fighting for her life. Julian,